Hey everybody and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video I interview my friend Vilhelm, who is a Swedish person that has lived abroad for many years and has just now recently come back to Sweden and is experiencing reverse culture shock in a way, being somebody that's born in a place but has been away for so long and coming back. And I imagine that's what I would maybe feel like going back to the US after being away for 4 years. Some things about your own culture can just seem a little bit different and a little bit strange when you've been away for so long. But before we jump into that interview, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is italki. When italki reached out to me, I'll be honest, I hadn't heard about it. And I was really curious to try it. So I gave it a try, and it's basically a language learning platform that offers one-on-one lessons with a community of teachers that are inside of the platform. So whatever language you want to learn or whatever skill level you are at, there's definitely people on that platform that can be a good help to you in practicing your language learning skills. Because my channel is focused primarily on different cultures and experiences in different places around the world, and especially in Sweden, and many of my followers are trying to learn Swedish, I thought this was a perfect company to work with. After having tested the product myself, I have to say that it was very cool. For me, I love learning new languages. I learned Swedish when I moved to Sweden, and now I'm working on learning Spanish because Spanish is a language that's spoken all over the world, and I'm very fascinated with Spanish culture as well. So I've been studying Spanish for about 6 months and I've built up some basic vocabulary, but for me, when learning a language, having conversations with people, being able to make yourself understood and understand the other side, that is the most important thing when it comes to learning a language. And I think that's what really accelerated my Swedish learning process, because I was in Sweden, but being that I'm not in Spain or in a Spanish-speaking country, it's much more difficult to have those conversations. And with italki, it's really easy to find teachers that are going to be patient and help you and really work with you one-on-one in having a conversation. No matter what your language learning skill is, if you're just a beginner or if you're more advanced and really want more advanced conversational practice, you can find a teacher that's going to be suitable for you. And they also have a wide variety of price ranges, so I would definitely recommend trying it out. In my experience, having tried it out, I thought it was very valuable to really get that conversational practice in. And even though I've only studied the language for 6 months, the teachers that I've tried have been extremely supportive. We've been able to have some basic conversations, which I think just really accelerates your language learning process. And they say that 19 hours on italki is equal to about 1 semester of a college course in a language that you're studying. Right now, we're getting towards the end of 2021, so what better time than now to take advantage of making some improvement on your language learning goals. There's actually an October language learning challenge going on right now with italki, and there's a link down below in the description that if you spend $10 on italki, you'll get another $5 free by using my name. That promo code and details will be down below. And really, if you're trying to learn a new language, I think conversations and one-on-one practice is really gonna make a difference. And I think it's already started to make a difference for me. Thanks italki for sponsoring this video. And with that being said, let's get to my interview with Vilhelm. I really hope you guys enjoy it. Hey everybody, I'm joined with a good friend of mine, Vilhelm, today. I think maybe I should just let you start us off a little bit of your background and then your experiences coming back to Sweden. Like, what have you noticed? It's very interesting.
Yeah, no, sure. So, hi everybody. Thanks, Stephen, for having me on your channel. So I could start with a little bit of background information about myself. I was born in Paris, as you know, to Swedish parents, however. So I spent my first couple of years over there. And then I moved back to Sweden actually for a couple of years, moving around a little bit. Before, when I was 13 years old, I was suddenly told by my parents that you're moving to a country called Oman, which I had never heard of before, and refused at first. But at 13 years old, you don't have so much to say. Moved down there, and I spent my high school years in Oman, which was quite a surreal experience, very different from what I was used to, growing up in the Middle East, of course. And then from there on, we'll get in more into that, because then I went to London to study in university, and then I moved around a little bit more, back to France, back to Oman again, and since May this year I'm back in Sweden after 12 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. So coming back to Sweden, like after all these like very unique, diverse experiences in a lot of countries, like what are the things that have like surprised you the most or have been like the most difficult to adjust to? Because I remember one time you telling me that like if you're an expat and you come back to your home country, if you've been away for 7 years or more, then it's almost like you're an immigrant into your own country. It's like you're having to adjust again to your own country. And now you've been gone for 12 years. Yeah. So you're over that 7-year threshold. And I'm only at 4.5 years gone from the US. And I already feel like I'm this weird mix of like half American and half Swedish. Like I don't identify fully with either side. And in your experience, you probably had that even worse compared to me. So definitely. What surprised you the most?
I think, just in that saying that you're talking about there that I mentioned before, I think what's interesting with that saying is that it's not like a universal thing. It's not from one country. It's like that in every country. I think this is particular for Swedes, at least when I heard it. There's something about these magic 7 years. Now, obviously, I left when I was a bit younger, so for me it's a little bit easier to come back, I think, and assimilate. However, that kind of still rings, and I think it's that culture shock that Sweden is in so many ways just kind of rigid in the way that it is set up, and you know how Swedish people are, like I've seen in some of your videos, and like I mentioned before, and I think that like that Swedish just kind of disappears out of you when you've been gone more than 7 years. Now I've obviously been coming back here in the summers. I still have a lot of family here, extended family and so on, and which I see, and my family still keeps our Swedish traditions, Swedish Christmases, the Easters, the Midsummers. So in a way it has been a little bit easier. However, I think fitting in again, especially in like a friends group, for example, like we talked about this before as well privately, that people are very tight knit in Sweden, and then a little bit reserved from other cultures and other people from other countries and so on, especially maybe not as much in Stockholm, but like more so in the smaller cities. And I think people can be scared of just moving flats or homes in their own city. I think moving to another city or to another country is a pretty big step. Maybe not so much for the newer generations of today, but definitely I think in the older generations. And I think that's why they think it's a little bit crazy coming from the Middle East and coming back here. And I think that the fitting back into those friends groups can be a little bit difficult for some people, at least coming back.
Totally. And I see it as well. Like when I go back to the US, like I'll see people that I went to high school with or people that I was in college with, and it's like they have these new experiences, like somebody got a new dog or somebody's getting married or somebody bought a new house, and I'm having completely different experiences, like learning new languages, traveling to new places, learning about different cultures. And it's sort of like when you travel, you change as a person, and it becomes sort of like hard to relate because these people that you grew up knowing, there's a completely different side of you that they don't know anything about. Like I speak a language that nobody else in my family can speak or understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's really bizarre actually when you think about it.
But do you think that has to do a little bit maybe with the pacing of your life changes when you travel? So some people are kind of intertwined or interknit into their own, like traditional way of living, and then you study, you work, or you go to uni or whatever, you start your family, you get your villa, you get your dog, you get your Volvo. But when you do start seeing new cultures and you start experiencing different parts of the world, learning new languages, like you said, like myself, I studied 5. It's interesting when you start speaking, for example, Arabic to a cab driver here or whatever, you can connect on another level. And I think that the pacing changes a little bit, and maybe you don't get so stressed into starting that life. Instead, it gives you a little bit more time to get that later in the future.
For sure. Okay, so how difficult was it coming from like Swedish English background, French background, to learn Arabic? Because that language seems like completely different than any of them.
I think, obviously, since I'm 2-3 years old, I'm trilingual. Basically, started learning Swedish, English, and French from the beginning. But they are all Latin languages. Learning Arabic is not only learning a new language because it's a new alphabet. And an alphabet isn't like you have A in English, so it's A in Arabic, or B in English and it's B in Arabic. It's like learning a whole new point of view of life, and it gives you an even deeper understanding. I think that's why language is so important.
It's super interesting when you do understand like the way people formulate meaning behind their sentences. It's sort of contributes to the way that people actually see the world. And I find that very, very interesting. So
and then things like poetry or whatever, you know, like Arabic is one of the nicest languages in the world for poetry, but people don't really know that. And it has to be read kind of in the real language for it to really be like understandable.
That's powerful.
It's one of my big regrets is not learning Arabic properly, actually. Living abroad. But as long as you start getting the gist of it, it opens up quite a new world.
So how much time like total have you spent in Oman over the course?
So in my whole life, so I lived there the first I moved there at 13. I left when I was 18, and then I moved back. And I lived there 2 years before moving back here now again. So I think between 7 and 8 years.
Wow!
But for the last 12 years, I've been going there every Christmas. I've been celebrating my holidays there. My family's still there. And it's just so many crazy experiences over there. I have so many friends, both international and Omani. When I first came there, I started in completely like an Arabic school with I was the only white guy in the whole campus of 1,000 students. That was a culture shock, and that was crazy, and very different from my secluded and safe Swedish bubble that I had been living in before. But it becomes a new bubble over there, in a sense. I wasn't there for very long. I changed to the American high school later, where I started making new friends, and that's when I really started living into this third culture kid, expat kid kind of vibe. We were a group of 9 friends that went on a senior trip when they graduated. We were all of us from a different country. One Dane, one Panamanian, one Italian, one American. And so forth, right? Mexican. I was just, I think, very privileged to be able to experience that and to understand the world from their point of views. But in a sense, we became our own country. So we were not Omani, we were not our home countries, but we became our family. And I think that's the thing that I bring most with me from that, is that you can be that global citizen, and you can experience the world from a point of view where you're all different but you're all the same. So coming from that background where you've gotten to see like all these different perspectives in a very international sort of environment, like what is it that stands out to you the most about like specifically Swedish people compared to all the other people you've met? Because I know like I've had some comments recently like that I'm making generalizations, and we were discussing that before this. It's like every country has people of all different backgrounds and things that are common. Like if you'll meet people from Sweden that are into video games, and you'll meet people from the US that are into video games, and you meet the sporty guys here and the people that are sporty over there, and it's like every country sort of has their own little like niches and bubbles and things, and those can be sort of common across different cultures. So it's hard to like generalize like an entire culture, but at the same time, culture is something that unites us. And so that's why I'm very, very curious, like, and what I try to like delve into in this channel, like what are the cultural like influences that affect people, and because so much of my audience is Swedish, like that's what like really fascinates me, and what I've always been noticing coming from the US and comparing US people or different cultures and people that I've met to Swedish people. So like from your experience and your background, like and your perspective, like what is it about Swedish people that stands out in your mind? I think I thought about this question a couple of times myself. I always really like coming back, and even though I was living abroad and like really happy about that, and I've become the person I am, something's always pulling me back in a way, and that's one of the reasons I'm living here right now. And I was trying to explain to some other people like why Sweden and why this, and when I was coming back here over the summers or over holidays or whatever, and just hanging out with some of my old friends, some of the things that really stood out to me, I think, was that I could in a way reconnect to my culture, and things like just cooking dinners together, like organizing like these little like dinner parties at home in a different kind of ambience. I think that was something very Swedish and something that I was quite enjoying. I think the way that you hang out, both men and women in Sweden, it's something that's a bit different, obviously, from Oman. And I think that even though people were international over there, like the Omani, the Islamic culture, a little bit sometimes took over a little bit. So here, just that you can do it safely in your own home, kind of very, very comfortably, and that you're equals. I think that stands out. I think people in Sweden are quite, they're cultural, and they stand by their traditions in a way, and they try to not be traditional, but Swedish people are more traditional than you think. And I think that's something that's both funny and true, you know.
Yeah, it's very interesting with Swedish people because it seems like Swedish people are very open-minded, but they're also very progressive in their culture, and they really stand by these like specific things that they really highly value. And I'm lucky that a lot of things that Swedish people value that I also find valuable in the way that I do.
Interesting that like they try to be very, very, very progressive at the same time, like, you know. Something that many of my friends abroad say is that Swedes talk more about Sweden than other countries. You know, we pretend like we're not patriotic, and then we really are. And you know,
we don't wave the Swedish flag everywhere, but when it comes to like
goddamn, you know who Swedish is when he's abroad. You know, you can tell.
Exactly.
And I think that's it's great. It's a positive thing.
For sure.
At the same time, I think maybe they also need to have some insight into that. I saw a video of yours where. You know, your Swedes cannot take decisions. I think that's something that's funny and it's a bit true. And I think Sweden actually has like a really great name abroad, made in Sweden. It's fantastic. You know, I went to Iran, for example. In Iran, you can't really go there as an American, right? But as a Swede, you know, they love it, and almost any country, you come there and you say, well, you know, where are you from? They think you're British or whatever, but you're Swedish. It stands out, and I think Swedish people should know that, and I think that, you know, we should maybe not be so indecisive, and we have the possibility to affect more than we think around the world.
But Swedish people, I think they have a lot of respect because they don't like annoy anybody else. Also, it's like the country that doesn't want to we just like we mind our own business, right? And like neutral all the way. Like you do you over here, you do over there, you over there, and we just
it's very true.
Do our own thing.
Where we stand in our own thing, and you know, there's that picture like Swedes like waiting for the bus, and it's like 3 meters between each person. We do like our space, and we are very warm, but I think like I was saying earlier, you know, the tight knit groups and. You know, you like your own space and you put in your headphones and the same thing it's the same thing we do around in the world. Oman, by the way, is also like that in the Middle East. They're in a very hot zone, you know, but they're like the Swiss or the Swedes of the Middle East, and they take a very neutral standpoint, and they're in the intermediaries in very many international conflicts down there.
Interesting. So you're talking about like the one way that Sweden sort of stands out is like how both genders are like hanging out together oftentimes.
Yeah, I think
like
that's one thing, you know. And then I think obviously we shouldn't get too political either, you know. But obviously the social system that they have built up here is very great.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny when you see, you know, with Trump a couple of years ago, just, you know, look at what's happening in Sweden and so on. It doesn't really make any sense, you know. Swedes have kind of figured out a system that works for them, and I think that resonates in many parts of the culture. Like, we do take care of each other, we do work for each other. Sure, there are more systems in place, you know, that could work better, but overall, I think that's one of those cultural things, a strength that we have, is that we do have a pretty high functioning society. Yeah,
everybody like in Sweden seems like they're very well taken care of. And that's something that I really appreciate. And like for me personally, people ask me like, do you think you have a higher quality of life in Sweden or America? And my honest answer is like, I think wherever I go, I'll have a high quality of life, because in America I'll work hard and I will pay less taxes, and then I'll pay more money for college and healthcare and all these other things, and at the end of the day it's probably going to about even up. And in Sweden I pay more taxes and other things are covered, and you know, and ultimately, like for me personally, I think the quality of life is about even. But the pro side with Sweden is that in general, everyone is taken care of. So like you don't have this extreme group at the bottom in Sweden where people are desperate or homeless, like really struggling in the same way that we have it in the US, for example, like with LA, and there's tents of homeless people.
The homeless roads.
Everywhere, like entire neighborhoods of homeless people. And like that's something that I think I can appreciate with Sweden, that even if you're not doing super well, like there are systems in place to sort of take care of you. And it doesn't necessarily affect me personally. So I'm not out here like, yeah, like I need this and this and this, so that's why I'm in Sweden. Like, no, I feel like I can take care of myself either way. But I like living in a place where everybody's taken care of, and it just creates this sort of relaxing environment for everyone.
Yeah.
And what was the system like in Oman?
Oman is a little bit different because Oman is oil rich, so
yeah.
everybody's taken care of.
In a different way.
In a different way. There is a social system in place, you know. They had a very good leader for many, you know, for over 40 years. He passed away last year, unfortunately. Who raised the country from poverty. I mean, it's crazy. There was no electricity. There was no roads. There was one hospital, no schools, and this was in the 70s. And when he took over, he brought it up, and it was the second, highest performing country over the last 40 years after China. And today they have the 5th best roads in the world, you know, free healthcare, free education, all of these things for everybody. Wow. Of course, this is a lot attributed to the oil money, but there is still a system in place that works. Oman has its issues, you know, but yeah, one thing that they don't have over there is, I mean, they have the system without the taxes now. Yeah. It's not going to last very long. Yeah. So of course, like, there has to be, you know, a lot of diversification right now into the economy. And I mean, that's one of the reasons I was living down there. I was working with environmental projects and trying to create new innovations, you know, for creating a more sustainable and more healthy living.
Nice. So coming back to Sweden, what's your favorite thing about being back here?
Yeah, I think again, like the people and the fact that when I'm abroad, I'm representing Sweden everywhere. In a way, I mean, I look Swedish, you know. I talk a bit maybe Swedish too, you know. But coming back here, I've always kind of been the international kid, and I think settling in here now, becoming more Swedish, like being part of the society and so on. I think that's one of the best things. The people, getting those real connections, you know, over a long period of time. Yeah. You know, and normally people say things like the food or whatever. The food is great here. I mean, Stockholm has very nice food culture, especially. I mean, going out is one of those things also that really shocks me here. People go out a lot for dinner, you know, and it's surprising me how everybody can afford taking out on dinners all the time.
It's like a mini New York in a way.
It is.
It's a little faster paced in Stockholm. People are going out a lot, and I noticed that in myself too. I'm going out more often than I should, but the food is great when you go out.
Food is great. Yeah. And I can compare it to like London. London also is great food. You know, Paris even better. These are cities where I've lived. But I think that the vibe here, like, in general, is a kinder vibe, softer vibe. Not as rough on the edges. Pace is fast, but you can go through the pace at your own time, you know. Yeah. And then small things like everybody here is very athletic, very very, very sporty. I think that's a lot of fun, and people are always up for adventures. Yeah. You know, just anybody can call you up for a paddle match whenever, or go out into the skärgården in Stockholm. Summers are great. I have not been here for a while in winter, so let's see how I cope. Yeah. But it is going to be a fun experience. I haven't seen snow in 5 years. Wow. So
I would call that lucky.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. But you know, as dark as it gets here, I think the city at least is more beautiful. If we are lucky enough to have a white Christmas. Yeah. And apart from that, I mean.
Okay, last controversial question, and then we'll wrap it up. So I think both of us have been lucky to date people from different cultures and different places. So like, do you see any sort of differences between like dating a Swedish girl or a girl from France or Oman or somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this question the other day actually, also again. I think the most striking differences are with the Middle Eastern girls, for example. I dated a couple of Iranians and so on, and Omani. They are, how do we put this? It's a little bit different, I think, a feminist initiative or feminine initiative. Here, I think everybody's ready to pull their weight. I think that you're dating on the same kind of levels, you know. You understand each other, and you know when you're sort of putting up your boundaries or whatever. There's a better understanding over both. Down there or over there, it's a little bit more more dependent on me as a man.
It's more like the guy's supposed to take the initiative.
A little bit like that.
Culture.
I've heard like comments like like I'm not gonna be working, and these kind of things, and I think that's a little bit difficult, especially when you're young or you're a student or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe later in life, and if I become successful,
Yeah.
But and then again, I think I said this to you before as well. I think that obviously I dated more girls from abroad than I had Swedish girls because I've been living most of my adult life abroad. So that's no surprise there. But in some way, there's always something missing. Not always, but you can feel there's something small. And I think that when I do marry, which I hope one day, it will probably be with a Swedish girl, because I think the cultural, we can sit here and we can talk about how cultures are so similar, but there are small differences at the end of the day. And I think that the person you want to continue your life with, it makes life a little bit easier. Like we said, the holidays, the language, the same way that you think about raising kids, the same thoughts that you have on politics or on sustainability or the world. It's small things that you don't think about before, and you fall into that later.
And I was thinking, it's so interesting because I sort of feel the same way. People are like, what country or like what ethnicity of girl do you think you'll end up with? And I always come back to like, I feel like there's just something special with when I date an American girl, because they understand like my upbringing. There might be some sort of inside jokes or certain cultural experiences that like from dating somebody in Sweden they would not pick up on, like certain references. Not to take anything away from Swedish girls, but like I find that like the people that I click with the best are either American or at least people that have like traveled extensively and spent time in the US, so they can relate to sort of my background, because my first 21 years of living were in a country, and to date somebody seriously that has zero experience with that culture, it's much more difficult. And I think having that common ground about certain things makes it so much easier.
But it's the common ground of that, and that's the cultural aspect. But it still needs to be a person that has an understanding for your international outlook. I mean, that's going to be key for me. I mean, my whole life, and I think I surround myself with people that are, that have that international outlook, and I think that is very important. We have to continue, this globalized world and continue to share our different cultures with each other.
That's a very good point, because I don't think I could date an American girl that has never left the US.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Never seen anything. So I mean, we're sort of in a unique position, because you want somebody that can understand.
Makes the pool smaller, doesn't it?
Exactly. Well, that's great. So thanks guys for watching this video. Thanks Vilhelm for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Let me know in the comments section if anything stood out in today's video about some interesting cultural differences. Love to see what you guys have to say always. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in another video.
Bye-bye.